In this lesson, we'll see how real waves can be used to simulate large open bodies of water within RealFlow. Okay, so for this example, we're just going to start with a blank scene. We'll build this from scratch. So let's go ahead and go up to the top. Let's go to our RealWave menu, and let's start with a RealWave surface. So here's our basic RealWave surface here. Now at the moment, you'll see there's really not a whole lot to be seen with this. If I were to go ahead and set this to a smooth shaded mode, and if I were to actually go ahead and simulate through this, again, you can see really not a whole lot to be seen here. So let's go ahead and start by just dropping in a basic primitive object. We'll use something like a cylinder in this case. We'll use this as sort of a way to kind of disturb the surface and start to add some waves in here. So I'll go ahead and take my scale for this cylinder and set this to something like 0.2 by 1 by 0.2. So that way we have sort of this little skinny cylinder here. And I'll maybe just pull this back and just set a quick position keyframe on the Z-axis. Pull that forward and go to maybe frame 80. And again, position Z. There we go. Oh, actually looks like we might have accidentally overridden that keyframe, so let's try that one more time. There we go. So now, if I were to go ahead and hit the A key on my keyboard and simulate that through, now we can actually see this real wave is doing something. So as the name suggests, this is really meant to simulate the waves and pretty much just an open surface of water. So this is going to be good for open ponds, lakes, anything where we need a very, very large open body of water that maybe doesn't have to actually splash and have details like drops and turbulent motion, things like that. So looking at this, there are several different options that we have as far as the overall behavior of this real wave. So the first thing that we have is if we were to select this, we have our polygon size. Now this is essentially just the resolution of this mesh. So if I were to set this back to a wireframe, you can see if I were to take this polygon size from 0.1 up to something like 0.2, you can see that these polygons become much, much larger. So as a result, we're going to have much less detail. Likewise, if we were to take this and set this down to something much smaller, like 0.05, and again, set this to a smooth shaded view, let's go ahead and reset that. Let that play through. You can start to see that we get much more detailed patterns in here. Now, when it comes to actually controlling the interaction of an object with a real wave, there's actually a special set of attributes, so those are not going to be found typically as we select this real wave. But what you will notice is whenever we created this real wave that there's this little plus icon right next to it. Now, if we were to expand this, we see that there's an interaction for our objects, or rather a panel that controls that interaction for our objects. Now this is where we actually start to get into what the waves and things like that look like for an object as it starts to pass through our real wave. So for example, we have something like the wave speed. So you can see right now our waves are spreading out really, really quickly and radiating out very fast. So what we could do is take this wave speed, and if I were to drop this down to a lower value, maybe something like 0.5, and go ahead and resimulate, you can see how our waves spread out much, much slower. So if we were, again, trying to simulate something that maybe was a much larger body of water that we didn't want those waves to move out quite so quickly, we can start to create the appearance of a larger body of water by making those waves move slower. Likewise, we also have control over how long these little wave ripples live. So that's controlled with this wave dampening. So you can see right now these waves are actually living for quite a long time. Now if we were to take this wave dampening and start to bump that up and start to play that through again, you can see where again our waves start to die out much, much faster. And then if we wanted, for example, our wave height maybe to be a little bit smaller or rather larger, so if we wanted some more substantial waves in here, again inside this object interaction, we could start to take our max height and begin gradually raising that up. So I'll take that up to something like 0.2. Now you can see that gives me some more substantial waves in here. I can raise it up even higher, maybe to something like 0.5. Now you can see we start to get some really, really big, deep waves in here. Now, what we can also do is if we want our real wave to maybe cover a larger area, that's as simple as just simply coming in taking the scale and then increasing that. So if I were to take my scale up to something like 20 by 20, and then go ahead and reset and start my simulation again, you can see that by increasing my actual RealWave size, that does not actually adjust our RealWave resolution. So you can see the actual polygons are still the exact same size. By increasing the scale, we've just simply added more polygons that are stretching out into a longer distance. Okay, very nice. Now, in addition to just having our basic waves in here created by our objects, we can actually come into these RealWaves and start to add some turbulence that would be created by just any kind of an open body of water, really. So within this RealWave, if we were to come up to our nodes list, right-click, and go to Add Wave, we actually have several different wave types that we can start to add in here. So something like the statistical spectrum, that's going to be really useful for simulating waves with peaks, things like that. Now, if I were to hit Control A on my keyboard, we should actually be able to see that. And if I hit A to simulate, we should actually start to see a little bit of this wave movement in here. Now we can come in and customize this if we want to. So maybe starting to take some of these different attributes, things like the vertical scale. Maybe if we want our waves to be a little bit more substantial, start to take that up a little bit higher, maybe something like 0.007. And again, Control A to reset. That should start to give me a little bit more of a view of actually what this is going to look like. Now, if we wanted to create some more of these stronger peaks, we could start to take something like this dimension. Now, by increasing this, we should start to see some much more substantial waves. So I'll take this up to something like 800. There we are. And now we can really start to see some of these peaks and caps in here. Maybe take that up even a little bit higher. Now, as we start to get to some higher values, you can start to see some really, really strong peaks, almost to the point where we start to see some errors in the actual generation of that. So definitely something to be aware of as we start to adjust these values, that it is definitely possible to bring those up too high. Now we can also come in here and start to adjust things like our wind speed. So maybe if we want our wind to be blowing a little bit faster, we can come in here and start to adjust that. So you can now see our waves are moving a little bit faster. Now overall this might still be a little bit too strong, so we can always start to come in here and again maybe start to take our vertical scale and bring that down maybe just a little bit more so it's not quite so strong. Now what's really nice is the fact that we can actually take our multiple waves here and actually start to add more in. So we already have this statistical spectrum wave, but we could also add something like maybe a fractal in here as well. So you can see maybe with this additional fractal we can start to create some more large-scale wave movement in here. And if we wanted to see what any of these looked like by themselves, we could take something like this statistical spectrum and just set it to be non-active. Now when I reset, we see just the effect of the fractal wave, but not the effect of the statistical spectrum. Alright, so again, we can just turn that back on, reset, and let this go. Alright, so I'll go ahead and just tap the A key on my keyboard to stop my simulation. And again, we can see as we start to scrub through this that we have these RealWaves, these really nice turbulent waves, as well as these little ripples and things created by any objects moving through our RealWaves. So really, this is just a very, very basic look at some of the things that we can start to do with RealWaves. Now, truthfully, we've barely even scratched the surface of some of the capabilities that we have. So we can also start to generate things like foam as our objects are starting to travel through the RealWaves. We can actually start to add particle-based splashes to our objects, so we can actually start to create some really, really realistic effects, as well as actually getting in and starting to create realistic coastline effects as our waves start to splash up. So again, lots and lots of really, really nice things that we can do with this. Now, if you'd like to learn more about RealWaves and how you can accomplish a lot of the things that I just mentioned, Digital Tutors actually has an entire course dedicated to the use of RealWaves in RealFlow. So if you're interested in learning more about these RealWaves, again, I would highly recommend viewing that course. So for now, that's a look at how we can begin getting started with these RealWaves inside of RealFlow.